Recent statistics show that nearly 8 million Americans have an eating disorder, and out of all the mental illnesses, this one has the highest rate of mortality. 95% of those people with an eating disorder are in between the ages of 12 and 25. The three most common eating disorders are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. Now, every eating disorder is very different, but each and every one of them is dangerous not only to a person's health, but their life too. Now, the most commonly known eating disorder is anorexia. Anorexia is when a person may be starving themselves and thinking they're still very large and obese and overweight, when in fact they're so underweight that their life is at risk. Here's an example. Girls that small and underweight think that they're ugly, and that is horrible. One girl, Julie Michael, wrote in her blog, "The problem was I saw my own weight as much heavier than it really was. I saw my body as something hideous and disgusting. A few well-intended but thoughtless comments made by my relatives around the age I hit puberty, and I ended up with a full-blown eating disorder." Now, the next well-known eating disorder is bulimia, yet it's actually the most common. Bulimia is when a person goes through stages of binging and purging. Binging is when they're eating a lot all at once, and then their purging can be anywhere from throwing up to taking laxatives. Yet, the most commonly known way for the purging is throwing up. That is a very common sight for someone to see who has a friend or family member who's struggling with bulimia. Now, on the internet, there's a site, and this girl writes her story. She goes by Jennifer, which is not her real name, but she writes, Romans 7:15, I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do I do not do, but what I hate I do. That shows how much she doesn't mean to. It's not her fault. She doesn't even necessarily want to do this, but because her body image is so distorted that she can't help it. I mean, it's kind of like if you have a really bad itch, you can't help but itch it. You have to itch it or else it's going to drive you crazy. Now, later on in this girl's writing, she puts, I am back in treatment again and struggling with this daily. If you want to call me messed up, go ahead. But honestly, I don't see how anyone could call her messed up because it is not her fault that she has an eating disorder. It could be from child abuse when she was just a little girl, or it could be from purely genetics. Either way, it is not her fault. Then, on another website, a girl, Ray Lynn, says, many times I tried to stop, but to no benefit. I thought I had it all under control, but it literally controlled me. Sometimes people, they can't help it. It's controlling them, and they cannot do anything about it. They try to stop it, but they can't. And it's just not fair for them. Then, until recently, compulsive overeating wasn't necessarily considered an eating disorder, but it's now referred to as binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is normally categorized by a person who is overweight and eats too much too fast. And they can't stop themselves because their brain tells them that if they're bored, they need to eat. If they have this emotion, they need to eat. If they have this emotion, they need to eat. That's just, it's not fair to them because they have to hide it because they're so embarrassed of themselves. Look at this picture. A lot of people with binge eating disorder will consume as much food as possible when no one is around or when no one's watching because they're just so embarrassed. Now, after discussing these, any confusion should be mostly cleared up. So, what do you do if you know someone or you think someone might have an eating disorder? Well, first thing you should do, depending on the situation, depending on the person's personality, confront them about it, but very gently, because you don't know how sensitive to the subject that they are. Then, if they kind of agree that there is a problem and their eating habits aren't healthy, then maybe you should suggest telling their family if you aren't family, or telling a doctor or getting help from a therapist. But the most important thing you can do is make sure they know that you're going to accept them no matter what, no matter how tall they are, no matter if they're boy or girl, no matter what race, no matter what size. But you also have to watch what they're eating. You cannot be oblivious to them saying, "Oh, yeah, I ate 3 times a day," and in reality, they haven't eaten in a week and a half. In severe cases, hospitalization may be necessary just because it it provides a controlled environment, and a lot of times it can actually really help people and it can help them heal. If you are in a situation where you do know someone who has an eating disorder, it's very important that you reach out to them and make sure that they know that you're there. They need your support in the times that they feel so alone, and I suggest that you get them help before it's too late.